Hey, my name is Rowan Smith and I want to welcome you to the Training for Trekking podcast. Now, this is the world's very first podcast which is entirely dedicated to helping you train, prepare, and conquer your upcoming hike, trek, or mountain adventure. So once a week, I'm going to be giving you quality and practical information on the subjects of physical preparation for trekking, dealing with altitude, and nutrition on the trail, so you can know everything you need to be doing to have the best chance of a safe, enjoyable, and successful adventure. So now you know what you're in for. Let's get into today's episode. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So today's episode, we are going to be talking through how you can defeat something on the trail, which I fondly call the worm. So let me describe it to you, and it probably will sound pretty familiar, and I wouldn't be surprised if you've experienced this yourself. So essentially, you've gone out for a hike out on the trail and you've got a pack on your back. It might be a little bit heavier than you've been carrying recently, whether it's, a heavier day pack, whether it's a full pack, whatever it may be. It's just maybe a little bit heavier than you're typically used to. So you're cruising along on the flat, all is well. You're getting up and down the hills okay, getting through it, keeping up with everyone, all is pretty well. But then you come to a steep incline, and a steep incline that does have some particularly steep steps or high rocks to step up on. And as you try to step up, you realize, whoa, you know what? This is a bit higher than I'm used to. This actually feels a bit harder than I thought it would. And this is actually going to be a bit of a struggle. And you try to step up normally and you're like, oof, yeah, okay, that's tough. So your automatic solution and what your body likes to do is you do this weird little worming thing to get yourself up this particularly high rock. So you step up, you put your leg up on the rock, but instead of being nice and upright, nice and tall and just cruising along, you have your torso bent over. So it's, typically bent over horizontal. And then what you do is instead of stepping up nice and smoothly, you really throw your momentum up there. So really push yourself, jump yourself up, and then you slowly raise your torso up to vertical. So you go through this worming motion with the upper body, where you're using this momentum and then just really, really worm that upper body up. And that's how you get up these particularly steep steps. And this is something that I like to call the worm. Now, this is a common thing many hikers will do when they're faced with this type of situation, particularly when they've got higher steps than they're used to, when they've got a heavier pack when they're used to, and they've got steep inclines to face. And, while a lot of us do it, in all honesty, this worming action, it isn't particularly great. It isn't ideal. It's not going to be the worst thing in the world if you're doing it, but it's not ideal. And if you are doing this, it's really a clear sign that your strength just probably isn't quite there and isn't really where you want it to be for this hike. Because if you're worming all day, things are going to get tired pretty quickly. Those legs are going to get very, very tired. The back is going to get very, very tired. And it's a pure recipe for those jelly legs, the burning, huffing and puffing, and even a little bit of discomfort. And basically, that strength either isn't there in this situation if this is happening, either in general, meaning your legs just, purely, they're just not strong enough and they just need a little bit of strengthening in general. Or maybe you've been doing quite a bit of strength work. Maybe you've been, feel like you're reasonably strong, but you realize in this situation, the strength just isn't there. And then maybe in this particular situation, your legs just need some specific strengthening to help them with this type of thing, with this high stepping. So regardless, if you are going through the worm, you definitely want to put a bit of emphasis into defeating this. So essentially, if you are trying to go through this and you realize this is something you want to be that happens to you regularly, there's a few things that you can do to help defeat this, and it typically does come down to strength training. So essentially, if you're in this situation where you're like, in general, look, I feel like I just need to be a bit stronger. I do a bit of strength training, but in all honesty, this is tricky. Really, a few things you really want to be targeting. Number one, you want to be targeting your quadricep strength, so the front of the thighs. So when you're stepping on these rocks, you can really, really have more power, more force you can produce, so it can feel much more comfortable and you don't have to use all that momentum. But on top of that, you also want to be strengthening the glutes and the hamstrings as well, because the glutes and the hamstrings in this particular stepping motion is very, very important. And then on top of that, also core strength and maybe even a bit of upper body strength as well to keep the body a little bit more vertical. So, in all honesty, this is just a sign like that's saying pretty much strengthen the entire body. So, that's pretty much a sign that you should be taking your strength training seriously. And if you're doing a little bit already, maybe you need to do a little bit more. Maybe you need to push yourself a little bit more, or whatever it may be. And essentially making sure you're doing exercises like, step ups to strengthen up the quads in that particular movement. Things like, single leg deadlifts to strengthen up the hamstrings and the glutes. Maybe things like good mornings to do the hamstrings and the glutes, and maybe a bit of that sort of back strength as well. Maybe doing a little bit of, more core training or whatever it may be. But whatever it is, in this situation, if you are worming your way up, there's pretty clear indicator that strength needs to be developed. And that's sort of a sign that's saying, look, time to take it seriously. Or alternatively, maybe you are doing a bit of strength training already. Maybe you do classify yourself as reasonably strong, but maybe in this particular situation, you're like, look, just all out of nowhere, I'm usually pretty strong, but in this situation, I really struggle. I worm. No, this is something that I struggle with. In this particular situation, if you're already doing strength training, this is where we can get really, really, really specific with your strengthening to help with you in this particular movement. Because when it comes to our strength training, when we're developing certain strength development, I should say, yes, we can strengthen up the body in general, but also the angles that we strengthen up the body are very, very relevant because the body will get stronger through the range of motion you put it through. And if you're doing, say, step ups in your preparation, and you say you're doing step ups that are halfway up your knee, and say that's the sort of height on the box, and you're doing lots and lots of step ups, and the muscles are getting stronger, you're progressing there, that's really, really good. But then maybe if you come on the trail and the steps are, as high as your knee or a little bit higher, yes, some of that strength will transfer over, but there is a big difference between stepping up on a small box to stepping up on, a high step like this. So in this particular situation, if you're aware, look, this is a bit of a limiting factor for me. In your training, it's very worthwhile exploring, challenging yourself in this particular situation. So in the gym, at home, maybe trying some higher step ups than usual. So finding a particularly high box and giving that a go just with your body weight, seeing how that goes. Do that for a couple of weeks. Once it gets a little bit more comfortable, maybe just start trying it with a couple of weights. Hold a dumbbell at your side, hold a dumbbell at your chest, and give that a go. And once you've done that for a couple of weeks, maybe do that with a pack on your back. So your body can get used to that feeling with weight on your back going up in this high step. And you can really hone into this and get deeper and deeper and deeper, more specific, more specific, more specific for this particular thing. And you can same principle you can kind of do in most of your strength training. Yes, we always want to be doing general strengthening, but if there's particular situations where you really, really struggle on the trail, try to find something in your training which looks similar to that. And all honesty, I think this high step ups are probably pretty valuable for most hikers in one way or another, even if you don't struggle with this worm, because it's something that we all come across and we all get comfortable in our training. We all do things that feel good, but maybe once in a while, just mix it up. Maybe do a bit of a higher step. Maybe do a step that's a bit lower, but use a bit of extra weight. Maybe try tackling a step up with, going from side to side as opposed to straight up and down. And try a few different bits and pieces just to expose the body to different situations here. And in all honesty, I think that's just a good rule of thumb for most hikers in any way. But all in all, back to the subject at hand, if you do struggle with the worm, if you do realize that's something that goes on in your hiking, two things to do. Number one, if you're not strength training already, and if you're not attacking the entire body in one way or another, take it seriously, do it, and it will go a long, long way. Number two, if you're already doing that, you're already strength training, you feel like you're pretty strong, but you feel like you still struggle in this particular situation, start trying some of those high step ups in your training. Start exposing the body to that, strengthening the legs up in these particular angles, giving yourself some extra challenge, and I think it will go a long, long, long way. So I think that's enough on this particular subject today. I do hope it gives you a bit of insight. Hope it gives you some ideas. And I hope if you do struggle with that worm and if you do go through that on the trail, hopefully it gives you a few areas to explore in your training. So I think that's enough from me today, guys. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. Have a lovely day, and we'll talk to you very, very soon.